As I was looking towards the side street, a girlfriend that I was with was coming up the street to let me know that she was returning. And I told her that I had Jasmine in the car and that I was going to take her to find her mom. And the guy reached his hand in the back seat. He, he rubbed his hand across her leg. Jasmine started screaming. When I turned around, she said, "Jeff, get me out the car." I asked the guy if he touched her. As I looked down, his hand was sliding from the back seat, from the back rear side of the car. I didn't ask no questions after that. I just commenced beating him. I beat him until Jasmine started screaming, "Jeff, get me out the car. Let me out the car. Let me out the car." Because of Jasmine is why I stopped beating the guy. And the only reason why I stopped beating the guy is because of Jasmine.
We are about to watch the parole hearing of a man serving since 2010 for this crime. Now, you can listen to his story with an open mind, but don't worry, I'll share all the facts of what actually happened at the end. With that, let's jump in.
Are you ready to get started?
Hopefully.
All right. All right. Why don't we start out with having you give us, a brief but detailed explanation of the crime and then what was going on in your life at the time.
Okay. So my activities consisted of bad people, very negative people who were in the downtown area, and I was into drugs and take full accountability for my actions. I, for the most part, would consider myself the leader of the negative interactions and behaviors that were taking place, uh, and made poor decisions and choices based off of my reckless behavior and lack of, uh, should I say, responsibilities concerning people's and other people's well-being and so forth. Uh, I robbed a guy, um, and I beat him up.
Okay.
And over the time period of being incarcerated, I attempted to write letters to the parole board asking if I could apologize to the person, and try to make an impact on the changes that I've made while incarcerated. Uh, I never got the response from the parole board, but I'm even now at this point fully willing to apologize, be forthwith with what I have to say to both victims, to show that the decisions that I made were not decisions that a grown man should make.
Okay. So how did you choose this particular victim as the person that you were going to rob?
He had been downtown before on numerous occasions, and I knew that he frequented with prostitutes, and that's how I particularly selected him.
And then the child that was involved here, how did you know or meet her or come to decide that she was going to be a part of this?
So Jasmine was a girl that came through the downtown area regularly and got to saying hi to me occasionally. And that's how I not necessarily met her, but we just said hi to each other because she just always seen me hanging downtown in the downtown area. So on that particular night, she was out there past curfew for what I thought, and she said that she was looking for her mother. I don't want to make it seem like anything that I did was justified, but if you're asking me, the question, then I'm only elaborating what it is that you're asking me. So
Mhm.
therefore, when she told me that she was looking for her mother, I thought that her mother was a crackhead. We're in the downtown Davenport area. I told her that I would help her find her mother, and she trusted me. And I told her that if anything happened to her or somebody tried to put their hands on her, that they would be severely punished for it. I made the irrational, stupid choice to ask her to get into the car of the person that I beat up and robbed, and on a poor decision. Um,
Okay. Tell them what happened.
as I was looking towards the side street, a girlfriend that I was with was coming up the street to let me know that she was returning. And I told her that I had Jasmine in the car and that I was going to take her to find her mom. And the guy reached his hand in the back seat. He, he rubbed his hand across her leg. Jasmine started screaming. When I turned around, she said, "Jeff, get me out the car." I asked the guy if he touched her. As I looked down, his hand was sliding from the back seat, from the back rear side of the car. I didn't ask no questions after that. I just commenced beating him. I beat him until Jasmine started screaming, "Jeff, get me out the car. Let me out the car. Let me out the car." Because of Jasmine is why I stopped beating the guy. And the only reason why I stopped beating the guy is because of Jasmine. I felt that once again I had been violated sexually. Please understand that I'm not trying to make an excuse. I was molested when I was young, and it impacted me deeply. And I got Jasmine out the car and walked her down the street. And then her mom came around the corner. As her mom came around the corner, Jasmine screaming, and she's like, "What happened?" And I said, "Nothing to worry about. It was handled." When she asked Jasmine, Jasmine was like, "Nothing. Don't worry about it. It's all over with." Because the mom was being consistent, as a caring mother would, she wanted to know details. Jasmine didn't tell her details, and I didn't either. Later on, she pressed Jasmine to go ahead and inform her of what the situation was. Jasmine told her. She tried to exclude me. And by identifying the guy, she also identified me. And the mom came down the next street, came down the street the next day and said, "I'm glad that you helped my daughter out. Can I know your name?" And when I told her my name, she reported it to the police. I tried to explain the situation to the police, but I think they were more concerned with the fact that I had assaulted somebody and that I had robbed somebody. They were also concerned of why it is that I had got Jasmine into the car. Well, the truth behind that is that I didn't know. I knew that the guy frequented prostitutes, but I didn't know that he was into kids. I don't know how to justify that. I'm not going to try to justify that. I'm not going to try to make excuses for anything because it was wrong on my part to even get her in the car in the first place.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation and all the detail that you gave us. It really helps us to see you know, where your mind was at the time and what was going on. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you've done since you came to prison? You know, any interventions, any classes, where you're at with your high set, what you've been doing?
Okay, that's a little bit easier. So I've completed 3 of my high set tests. Math is my Achilles heel, and I have science. I passed all of them except for math when I was in Anamosa and I first started out on my time frame. I have taken my active and have completed that. I then asked my counselors to get me into Tech to Connect, which I've enjoyed pretty much during the whole process. I've learned things, plumbing skills, electrical skills, social skills. I'm still growing and I'm still trying to take accountability for knowing how to make better choices as far as moving forward. I'm married. I got remarried while I was here. My wife has been faithfully a visitor for the last 6 years. I got a church that's already taken me in as far as the support system out there in Pomboy Convention, non-denominational church. I planned on working at Prestige. I've completed my NCRC, which is, I think, a good thing, evaluations on skills and so forth and so forth. I've been like 16 months report free, I believe almost 17 months report free. I've gotten a job. I work as a utility worker on the unit. This to me is helping me establish being in a work environment and dealing with people socially and trying to continue to be respectful and grow. I'm 55 years old. I can't see my life as far as trying to be anything other than a responsible adult and trying to establish what left I have of a future. I'm running out of time. My mom's in Alaska. My sister's in Seattle. I have a residence that's right here in Fort Dodge. So God forbid I get in trouble, they'll just bring me right back. You know, so I take all these things deeply into consideration when moving forward and hoping for the opportunity to go out and prove that I can take the skills from Tech to Connect, my active skills, my schooling skills. I plan on getting back in school when I get to the halfway house, if I manage to get there, to try and complete my high set. And these are the things that I have accomplished and look forward and growing with.
It sounds like you've put a lot of work into your plan and figuring out where you can go to get, you know, services, get work, you know, all of that. So we appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna see if my colleagues have any questions for you now. James?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Miranda. How you doing, Mr. Morris?
I'm still nervous.
Still
But I'm
nervous?
Yes.
Okay. I was listening to you share, you mentioned Jasmine. How old was Jasmine that you knew at the time?
I thought she was 12, but she said she was 10.
Okay. And then when you were looking for a ride for her, did I understand you right that you knew the driver?
Yes, Marvin G. Ware. I knew him from frequenting the area and dating women at that time.
When you saw that Jasmine was being vulnerable and just dealing with the situation. What was your impression of Marvin at the time, or was that your understanding of him prior to you reaching out to get a ride for her at the time?
So I knew that Marvin dated girls. I was nowhere near the idea of him wanting to engage sexual acts with kids. So this is the part of where the violence towards him reflected deeply. And because it put me, I was already in a distrustful situation being with a vulnerable girl. She trusted me to not allow anything to happen to her. So when Ware did it, it made me look at him differently. It made me aware that what I was doing was completely wrong and that it was out of order. And that if this was not your intention in the first place, then why'd you even try to go ahead and get her in the car? It's like I said, it's really hard to explain and I cannot justify it. It was an irrational decision, which I hope not to make in the future. And I regret it deeply every day. As I said, I've tried to write letters. I wanted to apologize to Jasmine as even aware, because I put him in a situation, even though I wasn't aware that that's what his intentions were, that I put him in that predicament to make an indecisive decision, I think. It's hard for me to explain. But it wasn't anything that I never intended on anything like that to take place.
Was he a pimp?
Was Marvin Ware a pimp?
Yeah.
No, he was a trick, as would be termed, a person who liked to date girls.
Okay. When I also hear about your completion, congratulations, by the way, in getting to the third phase of high set.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, math is a continuous learning, evolving education and stuff. When I hear that you completed you said active?
Yes, ma'am.
Active. What were some things that you learned from active?
That the choices that I made could be of, so every action, it's a reaction. And every choice that's made can lead, if it's a bad choice, can lead to negative choices. And that because I was at the time engaged in alcohol and drugs, that my thought process was not normal on any level. So therefore, in order for me to better myself, the addictions and the habits that I had to change in order for me to change.
If I was to ask you to list 5 values, or you could list more if you choose, what would your 5 values be today that you feel that wasn't your values prior to learning active?
Consideration of others. Believing in myself. Not looking at what's ahead and what I could do to change it. What people said or thought about me. And I mean, a true one would be was I meant to be a part of this life? I mean, that's from the core of my being, is an honest answer.
What's your wife's name?
Kristen,
Kristen.
yes,
Do you value your relationship?
very much so.
6 years?
Yes.
Those are all my questions.
All right, Susie, any questions?
I do. I have a couple. Good morning, Mr. Morris.
Morning.
You've been incarcerated for a while.
14 years.
Yes, yes. So, and I know that, about, that you've skilled up, you've had treatment. As you've come to this interview, my question would be, is there anything that you've thought about that's made you nervous, that keeps you up at night regarding transitioning back out into the community? Is there anything you're concerned about?
First, that's a very good question. And two, yes, there is a lot of things that I've thought about. I've thought about how I would do things differently, opposed to how I did them before. And if I had the choice to do it again, before getting incarcerated, I would have never have done it. I would have focused more on prioritizing my life. And because when I got locked up, I was 40. I worked at Tyson's before. I worked at Woodfire Grill. I worked at jobs other that allowed me an opportunity. Iowa, for the most part, has been a blessing to me. I've never been to a state that was more willing to accept me with jobs, with barely any information concerning me coming from Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska. So now I've changed my district. I'm no longer in Davenport. I live in Fort Dodge. I did a diversion. So therefore, I'm not even a part of that area, my victims, or any of that, to focus more on my wife and trying to give back to her more solely of what she's given to me. And excuse me. And it's been a lot. She's moved up from Wisconsin and she came to be with me. She's been supportive. She's been to every visit. I think and it's probably because of an accident that we probably missed one or two. But I want to build a future for me and her, and one that I think that she deserves. And I also want to treat myself better because I think I deserve it. And I know that I have to work for it, but I have to put forth the steps in order to get it. By having a church that supports me and a community that's willing to go ahead and take me in and help me to get on my feet and get rooted back into society. It's going to be a slow process, but all my thought processes are towards nothing but positive things and making a change for the better.
Okay, so I just want to, what I think I heard from you through all of that, what kind of keeps you up at night or you think the most about is just prioritizing your life?
Yes, and not coming back here.
Okay, that makes sense. What's after, we were to move you forward today and you went to work release, what's after work release? What does that look like? Where would you go?
So the work at Prestige would allow me structure, but I'm also in the music. I don't think that would hold much weight, but I believe in myself as far as making music. I have a $500 drum machine. I make my own music. I have a church that is willing to have me in active groups, outings, helping back in the community. And those are things that I would want to do.
Okay. So regarding that, you talk about you have a machine, music, joining, are you talking about possibly, are you looking at that as a side job or just something that you would engage in? Would you join their worship team to be paid on staff or?
No, I'm not looking for it. Everything that I do is for most part of self-building. It's for me to go ahead and make myself feel good about myself and making decisions that could better impact my life and get a support team behind me that would help me to move forward. The only financial benefit I'm looking for is from my job. If I manage to come across music and it helps me open the door to something, that's a blessing on the side. Anything that I do as far as a job on the side, if I can get that on the side, then yes, I would look at it in a financial aspect to where it can apply and help me and my wife further build on top of what it is that we have now. Because as of right now, we're just holding on and struggling.
Yeah, that makes sense. What you said makes sense. So where would you live after work release? Do you have a goal, a plan of how you would transition from work release out into street supervision?
Yes, ma'am. I have an apartment in Manson. So the church is in Pomeroy, the apartment is in Manson. And that's where I would reside from the halfway house. And my wife will be coming to get me, pick me up, make sure that I make appointments. I would be solely responsible for it, but my wife is a very good person, and she's got my back like 3,000%. So she's going to be on my butt pretty much.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate you answering my questions.
I appreciate the time for asking them.
Any follow-up questions?
No, I don't.
All right, Mr. Morris, now is your time to tell us anything else that you'd like for us to know or anything that you might have prepared for us today.
Well, I think you guys took the questions and turned them into the responses that I would give if I was to have the time on the floor, which you're allowing me. So the only thing I guess I can ask is, or state, is that it's been hard for me, but I've grown in a way to where this is not the life I want. I don't want this. This is unhealthy for me, for my wife. I'm very responsible for all of my actions. For every choice that I made that was bad that got me here, I put myself in that position. I could have made choices and decisions that didn't allow this in the first place. So accountability is something that I learned has to be a part of my growth. And without it, then I'm more than likely not ever going to get far in life. So I have to start off with accountability. Responsibilities are next. So I want to be able to get out, help my wife through the time that she's been out there by herself, standing by my side, and put forth the effort to give back as much as I can, to not only her, myself, but to the community too. This is it's really not my type of behavior, and I acted out of character. And as I said, if I could, I'd apologize to both Jasmine and Ware for that. And with that, that's pretty much it.
All right, well, thank you. Sit back, listen, and we'll let you know what our decision is. Susie or James, what are your thoughts on the recommendation of work release?
I can go ahead.
Sure.
I was pretty pleased listening to Mr. Morris, hearing some of the transformation that he has chosen to make while incarcerated for the charges that placed him in prison. I liked what he has accomplished thus far and still has the intent to do more. I liked that he has gone 17 months report free. Emphasized the importance of his relationship with his wife, being married for over 6 years. The thing that I liked hearing was that, if he's released, he talks about the community and how Iowa has been open to him despite his misfortune, his choices and decisions. He appears to be pretty remorseful for the decisions that he has made that placed his victims in the position that they were in during the incident. Therefore, I'm in support and in favor for the DOC's position for work release. I think, I believe 20B would be one of those goals. 40A with mental health, substance abuse. I still think there's some cognitive skills that he can still gain through some support. Also, with mental health, he showed some emotions, so still dealing with the experience or the traumatic experience that's taken place. I also throw in the 50A with no alcohol, no early discharge, but also, with him highlighting community service for if he's released. I think 40 hours would be a good start. That way, he's been incarcerated for some time, getting to know the community, helping the community, showing what his good faith is. He mentioned church, mentioned some music. He also mentioned, having an investment in some music that could be entertaining. So for those reasons, I highlight those things and anything else that you all deem appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I'm also gonna note too that this would be a C11 work release. It's a habitual, but the underlying was a robbery that is over a 10-year sentence, so it's flagged, just so we all know. Susie, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Meredith. I appreciate that he's skilled up. I don't have to go back into the HVAC. I mean, he's skilled up. He's done treatment. He's volunteered activities, so he's been engaged. He hasn't sat idle. I appreciate that his biggest concern is prioritizing, his life. That's a big, big thing. So that tells me that as he's moving forward, he's looking at this new life and how am I going to make it work? And, this is where I don't want to be. Here's where I want to go. So I was very pleased with being able to hear what his biggest concern was. And then he has a plan. What's after work release? I want to know what street supervision looks like. What's he want to do? It sounds like he's got a plan. He's got an apartment. He has supports. He talks about his church family being very important to him. And those are pro-social supports that are going to be helpful. I like that he has a diversion from the old playground, moving him out of a place where he was with old friends, the old playground, and moving into a brand new start. I think that he's set up for success here if he can walk his talk. And that's what I would hope and expect. I have a WRGC 11. I've got mental health, medication compliance, substance abuse, the 50A, and because of the length of time left on the sentence, I think that a 20B is really stretching us out there, but I'd be fine with that if we can come to agreement on it. But I thought if we don't want to do the 20B, I'd be looking at GPS monitoring and actually adding it into the 40A. I also, just for conversation, I wanted to talk about whether or not we were interested in a 30A with the child being involved. She was 10. And I'm looking at his past charges here.
Let me look at the actual charge before it was a habitual real quick.
Yeah.
So using a juvenile to commit certain offenses, you're right, we would need to do that because it's under 709A. So it's under, good catch.
Thank you. So I would also add that 30A. Those are my thoughts and recommendation. And I also want to say this as I'm closing is I really appreciate that he's involved in that high set. It's something no one can ever take away from him. And it's no small feat to complete that high set. And he says he's going to. So James talked about that. I'm fine with including high set or cognitive, but it sounds like he's really driven. So I can support that. And I just want to encourage him to continue to do that and get that diploma in his pocket. Because again, it's something that no one can ever take away and he can be proud of.
Okay. So I'm also going to support this release with the C11. I'm going to see if I can try to wrap all the codes in together. So I was looking with the no early discharge. I don't think he's going to be eligible regardless due to the length of time in the sentence. So are you okay leaving that one off? The no early discharge, he's not going to qualify.
Yeah.
I had to look into that myself. And then, so I've got the 30A, because the original charge included violation under 709A. I have the 40A for substance abuse, mental health, medication. I heard cognitive, which it looks like active was completed in 2018. So I agree with doing that again in the community. The high set I go back and forth on. I don't, because it is in the standard condition to work toward education.
Yep.
And we're kind of loading on things.
Let me clarify. So I was either cognitive or high set.
Okay.
And so I can support the cognitive, knowing that he's going to continue with his high set anyway. I think it's something important to him, but cognitive, I can support cognitive.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then I heard James also recommend 40 hours of community service to get him engaged in the community in a positive way, which I can support. It is a lot, but he has it doesn't mean he has to do for the 40 hours, the first month he's out.
I can support that. I'd also thrown out the GPS monitoring due to the crime.
With the diversion still, do you want to start with it?
I guess I could probably leave it up to the field, knowing that they're going to be able to see that, and adding the 30A, I think will take care of that.
Yeah, I wish we don't have the supervision level generating here, so
Yeah.
he might, even with high scores, he might come out requiring it anyway. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the conversation.
All right, so I think we have a decision. So Mr. Morris, we are going to go ahead and grant your work release today. I'm going to explain every confusing letter and number and everything that we threw out. I know it's a lot. It's a lot for us. So the very first thing is, so you'll go out to the work release, which is where you'll start. You're going to have what we call a C11 status. What that means is basically before you leave the work release and transition to street parole, they'll have to submit your parole plan to us on paper for us to review again before you leave. You won't have another interview. That's nothing you did wrong during the interview. It's just that there's certain crimes under Iowa law where we have to approve your release before you leave the work release out onto parole. So that's why we're doing that way.
Okay.
So when you leave, you'll have all sorts of standard terms of parole that everybody has, and your PO will go over all of those with you. And then what we do during these interviews and when we grant paroles or work releases is we add additional special terms of parole. So that's what we were talking about. So the first one is a 30A. There's certain crimes under Iowa law that we have to start out with this restriction, and it's no contact with minors unless it's approved by your PO, because the original charge did include using a juvenile to commit an offense. We start out with that. The 40A, that's treatment codes. Those are things that we'd like you to engage in the community. So continue to address your history of substance abuse, continue to address your mental health, continue to take your medications. It doesn't mean that you're stuck with the ones that you're on, but it does mean if you want to change them that you need to work with a doctor instead of doing it on your own.
Okay.
And then we'd like you to engage in another cognitive-based class. So it'd be similar to active, whatever they have in the specific district, but build off of the things that you learned in active. The 40B, we'd like you to engage in 40 hours of community service to give back to your new community. And then a 50A is no drinking and no being places where alcohol is the primary activity. So no liquor stores, no bars that don't sell food.
Awesome.
Do you have any questions for me about what any of that means?
So the only one I have is the one concerning the minors. So I'm not a sex offender and I'm not registering as a
Correct.
sex offender, right?
Correct.
I just can't be around.
That's correct. Yep. So we use that code for sex offenders, but also if there's like child endangerment type charges
Right.
under those 700 codes, and that's what yours was. And with the juvenile, but no, there's no sex offense, no registration, nothing like that. Your PO will go over with you, if there's juveniles in your life that they would approve contact with, they just need like a letter to approve it. But we do start with this one when there's charges under certain Iowa codes.
I understand.
All right, well, thank you for your time today and we wish you the best of luck.
And I thank you for your support and I hope to go ahead and make you proud.
Take care.
Take care. Good luck, Mr. Morris.
And when I'm ready for you, she will call you in to do some paperwork.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay, let's unpack this. There's not much to unpack because even though we have an appeal, they don't list any information in the crime. But let's just start with the three reasons. The three reasons that the parole board member, whatever his name is on the right, gives for paroling him. Let's church, music, and investment in music. I mean, it's so bizarre and ridiculous. I have to play.
Is you mentioned church, you mentioned some music. You also mentioned, having an investment in some music that could be entertaining. So for those reasons, I highlight those things and anything else that you all deem appropriate.
Church, music, and investment in music. For those reasons, I'm going to grant parole plus everything you said. You can't make it up. Is that not insane? I mean, if you have to have a transcript and you're just reading it and you hear about this man's crimes, you hear about the accountability that he takes, which in my opinion is zero. And then the reasons you give are because he mentions church, he mentions music and investment in music. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, if you want to say, well, the amount of time he served, if you want to say, there's certain things that you can say, but accountability, what? Having a good exit plan, anything, just make it make sense, but you can't. Iowa's crazy. Iowa's crazy, in my opinion. Now let's go over the appeal. And again, a special thank you to Richard. Initially in the spreadsheet, this appeal wasn't here. There were other appeals. And I said, is there anything maybe? And it found out that there's an alias. Richard found the alias. We got the appeal. And now because of that, we have the details of this crime. And I have to admit, before I go over the details, that in my original unpacking, which I threw out, and really I could keep this to myself, I thought, you know what, without the information, what probably happened is maybe he brought this girl there, this child, as a way to trick the trick and then rob the trick, and he knew the trick would never tell on him. That was my thought. It's like what maybe happened, trying to give him some credit, the benefit of the doubt. But no, according to this actual appeal, he actually fully intended on selling this 11-year-old girl to the trick. And it was the trick that backed out. And the idea that this information is available in a transcript, that this man was convicted by a judge, it was a bench trial, that he was sentenced to all these years in prison, and that he makes up an entire story, actually the story that he used for his defense. And the parole board doesn't call him out on it. Remember, his good time is 2029. Even if they had denied him just on the basis that you lied, you're not taking accountability, which is what we would see in Louisiana. And we would even see that call out in Connecticut. They still might parole, but here, nothing. Nothing. They just let it go, which is madness. Now let's go into the crime. You can see how vile of a monster he is. So, the defendant appeals his conviction of the robbery in second degree in violation of Iowa code and using a juvenile to commit certain offenses. He contends he was denied effective assistance of counsel. Now, the background and proceedings. Let's go through all these facts, and I'm going to read it without interjecting my comments because I know a lot of you ask for that. So I'll give it a try and let me know in the comment section if you prefer it this way. Background and proceedings. On the evening of September 12, 2009, 11-year-old J.H. was riding her bike home from a skate park in Davenport. She had missed her curfew, and when she arrived home, her grandmother told her that her mother had gone looking for her. J.H. left the home and went to look for her mother. As she was crossing the street, J.H. was stopped by Morris. That's Jeffrey Clay Morris, who we just saw as parole hearing. J.H. told Morris that she was looking for her mom, and Morris asked her if she believed in money. Morris informed J.H. that there was a guy who was riding around in a car that had mad money, who was disgusting and liked little girls. Morris told J.H. that this man always rides around looking for people to pay to do stuff with him. He told J.H. the guy had $350 and that Morris would split it with her. J.H. told Morris that she wanted to go find her mom. She says, I want to go find my mom. But Morris told her that they would find her mom after this was over and she could trust him. Morris then waved at a small silver car being driven by Marvin Ware and called Ware over to the side of the road. Ware testified that he was in the area looking for prostitutes. He had been patronizing prostitutes in Davenport for 40 years. Wow. So people in the area recognized him and knew he carried large amounts of cash. When he saw and heard Morris waving him over, he pulled up believing Morris was JD. His friend Ware testified that he did not initially see JH stating next to Morris. At first, Morris and Ware spoke through the open passenger side window. Morris then opened the passenger side door, folded the passenger seat forward so JH could get in the back and kind of nudged her in. So it was probably a hatchback, like a two-door car. So that you know how you fold that front seat forward. Now JH gets in the back, and kind of nudged her in. Morris then sat in the front passenger seat of the car next to Ware. Ware testified that when Morris and J.H. got into the car, Morris told him that he had a girl for him and Morris wanted some money. Ware asked J.H. how old she was. Morris interjected that she was 16. J.H., the victim, corrected Morris, saying she was almost 12. Okay. That's what she says. No, I'm almost 12. Ware testified that he then told Morris and J.H. to get out of his car as he did not want anything to do with it. Ware and Morris argued, and J.H. started crying in the back seat, stating that she wanted to get out. When Morris refused to leave the vehicle, Ware reached down to get his wallet and tried to get his car keys out of the ignition. As he did so, Morris reached over and punched Ware in the head, neck, and face. Ware's head hit the steering wheel, but he did not lose consciousness. After the altercation, Morris got out of the car and moved the front seat forward, allowing JH to get out. Morris then re-entered the car, kneeling on the passenger seat looking for Ware's wallet. When he found the wallet, he removed $143 in cash, threw the wallet back in the passenger seat, and left the scene with JH. Ware left the scene after regaining his composure and finding his glasses, which had been knocked outside the car. Ware drove home after the incident and did not report the robbery to police. And why would he, right? It's part of the game. Oops, I said I wasn't going to comment. I'm sorry. Still crying, JH left on her bike to continue to look for her mother, which Morris riding behind her. JH's mother, Tony Bell, located them and asked why JH was so upset. Morris informed Bell JH had nearly been abducted, but he had intervened by beating up the man and freeing JH. Before JH and her mother went home, Morris handed JH $20 and told her to stay safe. After returning home, Bell contacted the police and informed them of the attempted abduction. The police interviewed JH at the home that night. She testified at trial that she initially went along with Morris's abduction story because she was afraid Morris would hurt her if she told the truth. Not convinced of JH's explanation, the police followed up with JH 2 more times. At the third interview, JH admitted there was no abduction and explained what happened. Police were able to locate Ware and Morris. Ware denied trying to abduct JH, stating that Morris tried to sell him JH and then beat him up and robbed him. Morris admitted during the interview that he knew Ware's proclivity for prostitutes and that he knew Ware was trying to pick up young girls. Morris admitted that he and JH went into Ware's car, but he claimed that he struck Ware when Ware attempted to fondle JH. Morris also admitted giving JH $20, but claimed that this was his money. He denied taking any money from Ware. On October 13, 2009, okay, so I'll stop right there. One is, tell me if you like it when I don't interrupt. I listen to your comments, so it's important that you let me know in the comments section. I'm trying to improve, and for many of you who've been subbed and watching me for a long time, I think you can see that I do and have improved, and I continue to work to improve my style and reading habits, etc. So let me know. But as you can clearly see, his story is BS. And the parole board didn't care at all. You know, he shows up and he says crying, fake crying. I mean, it's so obviously fake crying. There's nothing real there. And he's like, I only stopped beating him because she told me to. He tries to sell an 11-year-old girl to a man. He knew there's an opportunity, knew the guy is and he said, hey, I'll get someone for you. He's trying to make money. He's trying to get his fix, and he'll do anything for it. And he grabs a girl, he puts her in the car, and the guy is not a pedo. He's just a John. And he's like, I'm not gonna have anything to do with this. Get out of here. And then he gets robbed. This guy's so afraid. He follows the girl all the way to her mother. He gives her $20 to attempt to bribe her. And he shows up to his parole hearing more than a decade later with the same story, and the parole board buys it hook, line, and sinker. And if they don't buy it, they more than a decade later, 14 years later, it's a joke. It's a joke. They're disturbing. This parole board is dangerous. So now what happens? October 13, 2009, the state filed a 2-count trial information charging Morris with robbery second degree and using a juvenile to commit certain offenses. The state also charged Morris as an habitual offender under Iowa Code Section 9028. Trial commenced on January 11, 2010. At the close of the state's evidence, defense counsel moved for a directed verdict, stating at this time the defendant would move for a directed verdict based on the unsubstantiated contradictory statements by JH and by Mr. Ware. The state responded that based on all testimony evidence, when viewed in the light and most favorable to the state has presented a question of fact for the jury. Oh, there was a jury. I thought it was a bench trial. My bad. The state went on to outline how the evidence presented met each other in each element that the court ruled. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know what they're saying. The jury returned a guilty verdict January 13th. Morris stipulated to have 2 prior felonies. Prior to sentencing, Morris filed several pro se motions challenging the verdicts and requesting new counsel. At sentencing on February 25th, the district court denied the defense motion, imposed a consecutive 15-year sentence, and a notice of appeal was filed the same day. So he's a clown, and he's a dangerous man, and he's trying to sell 11-year-old girls to you know, and it's sick. It's sick. The parole board lets them get away with it. I'll put the link in the description. I don't think we'll read any more because I think we got the gist, but there's interesting things in here. Part of his, if you want more information. His criminal record is long, so here's his record. So it goes back to 2004, right? Control of a substance, and this is, I don't know, maybe this is when he was just turning 18. 4704, then 83104, burglary. But it says found 51705 theft, 71205 theft, 71805 no license, 9905 theft, 10105 carrying weapons, 102205. As you can see, like the dates. But let me show you here what's frustrating. With all the sentences, what they have in common is that there's no punishment. Carrying a weapon, right? He's found guilty. He's sentenced to 120 days, but it's suspended 120 days. That's his sentence. That's what they do. They suspend the sentence. Probation 1 year. Now, it's 20 days later, he picks up an assault charge. You would think, okay, now he's going to get in trouble. He's going to get something. Probation's going to be revoked. No. Sentence 30 days, suspended 30 days. It goes like this down for over a decade, over and over. You won't believe it. I mean, I know I could. It's insane. 11/16/05, criminal mischief, blah, 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 blah. Sentenced to 2 days. That's what he's sentenced to, 2 days, even on count 3 of assault. Arrested 225/06. Oh, here's he has count 1, sexual abuse, 3rd degree. Okay. And DV abuse, 2nd offense. Sentence 120 days. Suspended 90. Probation 1 year. So he had to spend 40 days in jail. Maybe that was time served. Then he has 225/06, right? Arrested on. Obstruction, emergency communications, blah, blah, blah. Keeps going on and on. Found guilty. Here's violating one-way traffic. Possession of 418/06. A DV with a dangerous weapon, sentenced 100 days, suspended 100 days. Here is a serial offender with record that goes on and on and on, and the judge is still suspending sentences. Hello? They dismissed this charge. He has a stalking. Here's the DV, which they dismissed. 10/12/06. Here's a DV, which that's the same one. I guess it's the same one. Driving under suspension. Defective muffler. Wow. They fined him $10 for that. I didn't even get a fine for $10. Drug paraphernalia 9506. Sentence to 1 day. That's a real tough sentence. Hard on crime over here. 2307. Sentence to 3 days. Possession of paraphernalia. 10/11/07. Driving under the suspension. You might say, okay, he's got a long record. Well, they sentenced him 30 days, suspended 30. And it's just like, what are the point of sentences? What are the point of all the suspensions? And it goes on like this forever. Here is a robbery 1st degree where he actually got a jury acquittal. Causing bodily injury, he got a jury acquittal. So look at that. I mean, he got a jury to acquit him once. So more driving under the suspension. It just doesn't stop. Driving with a revoked license again. I mean, he's a clear danger, just a danger. But here it is. Here's another one. Domestic. Here's a DV, second offense. 240-day sentence, suspended 233. I'm guessing the 7 days was time served. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. They keep giving him off over and over, and it goes on. The list goes on. Look how long it is. I'll be here all day. It's just insane. It's insane. And from this parole hearing, whatever, he's a great guy, music, yeah. Using a juvenile to commit the certain offenses. Yep. And there you have it. I mean, he does have, and he has one thing Richard found. He has a lawsuit against a local newspaper that talked about his sex crimes and said he had to register. And he sued them. He sued them for something like $100 million in damages. I think the suit was dismissed because it was past the statute of limitations. Who knows what would have happened if he didn't, because he's not, like he said, does not have to register as a sex offender. Even with all these crimes, he does not, because it's Iowa. And yeah, lucky for the newspaper, I'm guessing they would have had to settle, because it does sound, they were basically saying he had to register, or they were announcing him as a sex offender when he's, according to Iowa, not one. Who would have thought, huh? But yeah, it was past statute of limitations, so he didn't win. But there was something else that the state allowed him. Basically, he had to pay a certain amount of money to file the suit, and he didn't have it. And in the appeal, basically, they allowed the DOC to garner his wages as a kind of loan, so he could file his suit. Is in so many words. Anyways, if you didn't know the system was already broken in Iowa, hopefully now you might have that perspective. Thank you, Richard, for all the info. And with that, I'll let you go.